All right. Well, welcome. And let's go ahead and get started. I'll start share my screen here.
Okay.
Let's see here. Make sure I actually present in full screen mode. So welcome to day 2 of the business visioning. So today we are going to dive into leading with feminine energy. And this is really important to me because when I started to shift this, it really, really helped my business and just life in general. And I continue to evolve and incorporate this in my life. And so I'm going to share things that have been useful for me with you. And these are things that I share inside the retreats and my mastermind that's actually open for enrollment right now, which includes the retreat in Tulum or Scotland this year. So I'll add some links later. But I left this quote in from last week because I thought it was so pertinent to what we're talking about this week as well. Because the modern woman is a blur of activity. She's pressured to be all things to all people, and the old knowing is long overdue. And to me, the old knowing is actually how to embrace our feminine energy. And that's what I've found. There's so much, and that's intuition, and we'll go through a lot of it. You want to grab pen and paper.
I have them right here.
Good. And if you don't have time to do the exercises, you can always put this on pause or when you're watching the replay. But I'll take you through some of these as well. So what we're going to talk about today is what a balanced feminine and masculine look like. I'm not going to delve so much into the shadow, except in business, just because I want to keep there. Okay, I'm going to add Shauna there. I want to keep making sure that we're really talking about the balance side, rather than focusing on the shadow. But we're also going to talk about how wounds of femininity show up, and there's some journaling prompts for that, and the mother archetype in business, which I see over and over my clients kind of having issues with here. More so than the maiden archetype. So I wanted to talk about that today. And then how do you take all of this information and lead from the feminine in your business using the mother archetype? So hi, Shauna, welcome. So I mentioned grab pen and paper if you have it. I know Shauna, you have a baby, so you may not have time to do this, but you can always watch the replay and do it when you do have time. So again, just a little bit about me. I'm Alyssa Finnig. I host Wild Wisdom Retreats and the Wild Wisdom Mastermind. And I like to weave in the business expansion with ancestral healing and the divine feminine, because I think those are the pieces that we're missing when it comes to business. We know how to work in the masculine, like we're taught that. And so what we're missing is how to work in the feminine and bring those into a healthy balance. And I was just writing a social media post today about just a little bit of like reasons to travel with me and thinking about my unique business insight. And I kind of laughed because my social media person took some of my copy and wrote it. And like when I think about my business background, and I'm just going to share this with you, like it's very different from what I do today. So I want you to know that it evolves with time. So I spent my 20s running international electronic dart tournaments in Vegas and across the US and the world. So, and that's when I spent a lot of time traveling as well, because I absolutely love it. And I was blessed to work with the international conglomerates as well. And so like, literally, like if you go into a bar, there's electronic dart machines and pool tables that are all coin operated. That's what I worked with all of my 20s. And then I worked as a COO for an alternative investments group. And I was still in Vegas at conferences in high heels and dressed to the nines. I was maybe one of 10 women, but I was the COO. So I had the kind of status. So like I have this crazy background, but I left that to open my yoga studio and wellness center. And then eventually evolved into owning my branding and marketing business and bringing back my retreats, developing the retreats, which came, this concept, I want to share this because this is the importance of taking time to get grounded and taking the time to do things like this today. So I'm thankful for all of you jumping on and registering and watching the replay. Is my Wild Wisdom concept, when I had my Wild Wisdom podcast, all the retreats and everything came from me going on a Coaching with Horses retreat and getting completely out of my head and grounded. And all of this well of creativity sprung up that was more aligned with what I love. So I mentioned that because it's so important to take that time for ourselves. All right, let's dive in. So we're going to talk more about what the balanced feminine and masculine is, rather than get into the shadow. But just think about, are you holding these things? So the balanced feminine trusts the heart and the gut over the mind, tunes into people's situations, uses your intuition. This is not the same as learning how to walk on eggshells because, you maybe had a parent or a spouse that was imbalanced in some way. Using intuition is a totally different way of tuning into people and situations, and then using intuition for marketing, which we'll do next week. Strong boundaries. I was joking with a friend of mine who also uses my social media guy, and he said, "What does he respond every day?" And I said, "No, he's like 25 or 30, maybe, I don't know." And he has strong boundaries. Like, he tells me when he takes vacation. He asks me and communicates it. He doesn't do it in an angry way, but he's like, "I'm going to take 2 weeks at Christmas," or "I'm going to take a month in July," and then we work around that. So to me, those are great. And I totally respect that. Because it also reminds me to have those strong boundaries too, of when I want to take vacations or not work, and then communicate that with my clients. The balanced feminine asks what she needs from a place of self-love, surrender, and trust. This is one of the things I see that is so hard for us as women, for myself too, and asking for help, asking for needs, because you deserve it. We all deserve that. But being brought up away from the feminine, because our mothers are the first introduction to the feminine. And if they're not embodied in it, then we don't have much of an introduction. So we don't always learn how to ask for help. Raise your hand if you're like, "Yeah, I totally had a mother or aunts who, or grandmothers who just like self-sacrificed," and that's more the shadow feminine, but like it did everything for everyone else and put themselves last. I certainly have that mother. I love her dearly, but that's what I was shown, was being a good girl or a good woman, was to do that. And that's actually not self-love. And so the balanced feminine creates and births. It's all about family, sisterhood, and support, and allowing yourself to have support. And feel free to pop in the chat while I'm talking about this. We'll have times where we'll stop and you can share as well. But if you have anything where you're like, "That's me," I totally get it. So the balanced masculine is about, because this is energy, right? So we can, whatever gender, it doesn't matter, we hold these energies, and it's about balancing them. So balanced masculine holds space, is focused and certain, reflective and grounded. That's why I put more earthy pictures here. Committed to personal truth. And the doing arises from actually being. So that you can associate the being with feminine. So that, just like in the example where my Wild Wisdom concept came from, I was actually being with the land and the horses in Arizona for a few days, and totally moved from my like crazy, I got to do everything self, into just being. And then the doing arises, the creativity arises. Then we'll be, like I said, diving in, because next week is all about building the sacred container. And that's building the masculine container around some of the dreams that you did in day one, and embodying the mother archetype in business here in day two. So the balanced masculine seeks mentoring and responds rather than reacts and is deeply present. Not thinking about past and future, but like what's going on right now. Okay. Any thoughts? You're welcome to put that in the chat of like, no, I totally relate. I feel like I'm in this, or no, I'm not in this at all. Happy to talk about that. So grab your pen and paper. And so we're not going to do all of these together, but I'm going to pick two. And we're talking about uncovering your femininity wounds. And so I would like you to pick one of these questions, actually, on this first slide, one that resonates to you most, and just start journaling. And I'll give you a couple minutes for that. And I'll read these out loud just for everybody watching the replay. In what ways have I suppressed or ignored my feminine energy in the past? And how can I begin to embrace and honor it now? And just pick one question for now. If you're tuning in, of course, if you're watching the replay, you can put this on pause and give yourself ample time to do these. Second question, how do I feel about expressing anger? Who am I if I'm angry? Or when I'm angry? Is this true? I think that's a good follow-up question there. And what are some negative beliefs or stereotypes I have internalized about being a woman? Are they true? So if you're on here live, just pick one. I'll give you another minute because I'm going to have you do a second one on the next slide. And don't think just download and write. And then pick one question from here that makes sense if you're joining us live. I'll read these off. Who do you have to be as a woman? What is expected? What has it meant for you to be in a woman's body? What parts of you have you dimmed? What desires were unacceptable? Where have you had to be strong? And what have you hidden or stuffed away? So taking a moment to answer one of these questions if you're live. Of course, you can pause if you're watching the replay and take your time to answer all of these, because that will be everyone's home practice anyway, is to finish journaling these at some point when you have time. And for those who are live, when you're finished with your two questions that you've chosen, just pop in the chat or come on video so I know you're finished, and I'd love to have you share. Shauna, do you want to share?
Sure, I'll share some things I wrote down.
Okay.
So for the first question, I answered what are some negative beliefs or stereotypes and are they true? I think that some stereotypes, about being a woman, especially in like the career sense, is, that they can be, a little too bossy or a little too bitchy, or being loud is a negative thing.
Mhm.
Having being having expectations is being demanding. So some of those things that when men practice those, they're not necessarily considered negatives, but they definitely come out that way as a negative when a woman is expressing them.
Mhm.
And then some of the negative beliefs, I think, are that women need, permission to be able to do certain things. Like, and I find myself struggling with this too, or I feel like I need to get permission to lead or grow, or that I have to get somebody's help to do something to make sure I'm doing it right.
Mhm.
So those are just some of the things that kind of came to me from, especially from a career sense.
Sure.
And are they true? I don't know. I mean, I think that, and once you've internalized them for so long, like maybe they feel true.
Mhm.
They certainly seem true in the greater sense when you're, in society, because we all kind of have these norms we have to conform to.
Yeah.
But do they have to be true? No. I think we're trying to work that way
Mhm.
to to support women in a way that they're not true.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. No, I agree. No, it's interesting. I mean, having been in a leadership role in a male dominated world, and I was called a bull in a china shop because I led in a masculine way. And because that's the only way I knew how, because that's how my bosses were.
Hmm.
And my female bosses were. And my male boss was not like that, which is part of the reason I had to also do that, because somebody needed to. I mean, at that point in time in my life,
Yeah.
I thought that. And so, yeah, it's really interesting. And I was reading recently that there is a slew of uh, men leaving the corporate roles and women filling them, like the CEO roles. And because I think it was a media pitch that came across my desk, and I thought that, that's kind of fascinating. And then it was about how to support those women so they don't burn out. Because when you're leading with the masculine, it's really easy to burn out. But I agree. So let's see, I can't see everybody. Deborah, did you want to share? I'm not sure if you're just listening in. You don't have to share either. So
Yeah, I'm just listening.
okay.
For some reason, my camera is facing the wrong way when I turn it on. No.
Well, I had a camera issue. I was right in the middle of a Zoom yesterday and had the issue. And when I started today, my camera didn't want to start. Maybe there's some weird tech stuff going on. So
Yeah,
no
with
problem.
I think it was just about expressing anger, that how do I feel that it's dangerous because it usually leads to rejection, or
Mhm.
being seen as out of control, like you said, bull in the china shop, like
Mhm.
not allowed to express those feelings.
Yeah. And I think that's so prevalent for so many women. I know it is for me as well. And it's like, I'm still always learning. How do you, and trying to teach my daughter, how do you
Mhm.
express anger in a healthy way when, generations before us have just suppressed it and pretended things were fine.
Right. And our culture doesn't even say these are the acceptable ways for women to express anger and these are the unacceptable ways. They just say it is unacceptable for women to express anger, period.
Exactly. Yeah. Or you're an angry lady.
We don't even have any options.
Yeah, exactly. No, I resort to screaming in a pillow, or used to be a car, but I don't have one anymore. But and one of the things I noticed about the anger for me personally, and I'll share, is that it was tied heavily to grief and heartbreak. And I didn't realize that until I came across an article about remedies for a broken heart, and I was like, oh, that's what's happening. And then when I started to address that underlying thing, then I didn't feel as much anger. But yeah, it's the embodied processing of it is something, but you have to have so much space for it. Like, you've probably seen those videos of like mom screaming out on a football field or something, and it's like, yeah, everyone needs that.
Yeah, and I think it's right. It comes down to that fundamental unconscious shadow aspect, is when we're younger and we get angry, we're rejected and don't receive love and acceptance. So it just really comes back to
Totally.
that's why we bottle it up, and then we just can't hold it in anymore, and it turns into this irrational response instead of, I'm angry and this is why I'm angry, and can we work this out?
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, I'm trying to teach my daughter and hold space for her when she's angry. When she's 4 now, and I was like, I hate you, because she took the iPad away because I limit it. And I'm like, it's okay. You can hate me. But it's a little challenge. It's a little challenge to try to teach, shift that, especially while you're learning to process it as well. But yeah, you're right, Deborah. Like, it does start in childhood. That's where we learn how to repress things. And yeah, so generation by generation, we're slowly shifting that, but society will eventually evolve with that. But
Well, and I think as children, we're not taught the nuances of emotion. We don't know what led to the anger, like disappointment or frustration or sadness or whatever. We just get to a point where, and we don't even say we're angry as children, we just express it. So we're not taught the nuances that get us there, right?
Yeah.
We just all of a sudden are an angry child.
Yep, exactly. And it's like, what's behind that? And I think about like, there's so much more information now about these things. I mean,
I agree.
but like, when my mom was, had me, she was 19. It was like Dr. Spock, and that's like it. And so like, they didn't even have any of the tools. So at least we're progressing in some way.
Well, I know. And then, for me, my childhood was really traumatic and abusive. And I mean, I remember when I was probably 19, 20, seeing a therapist, and she asked me, why am I so angry? Trauma wasn't even talked about then. There was not even an avenue of communication around that. So I didn't understand why I was angry, right? Like, now at least we have that vocabulary around.
Exactly. No, I completely understand, because I grew up in a chaotic home. As well. And it was like, obedience was the way to get by. Good girl, people pleasing. And then that led me into relationships that weren't, reciprocal, because I just knew how to be a good girl. And that actually was like not good.
No.
So I get it. So let's move on. Deborah, you can start if you'd like, and then if Shauna wants to share, and of course, if you don't want to share it, totally respect that. In one of these questions, which one did you pick, and what are your thoughts?
I didn't really write anything. I think if I would have, it would have been, what are you dimming or hiding?
Okay. What are you dimming or hiding, Deborah?
Oh, like stepping out into the public eye, definitely. Even though I know I'm asked to. And then also, 75% of my clients are male. So I'm creating a framework for that. Like, am I worthy to, hold space for men, all that. Even though it's quite obvious from the clients I bring in and the clients I retain. So that's in process right now. Like, just step into it. Yeah.
Good. It's layer by layer, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Most of I would say 95% of my agency clients are men.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I noticed when I began to heal more of the masculine, and then of course the feminine too, but like more of the balance, coming into a balanced masculine, I started getting more male clients. My passion is working with women, especially on the retreats, but I attract men all the time. But and I actually have a call after this with a male who owns a medical practice about agency work and that brand strategy and website development. But yeah, I'm always fascinated. I joke with some of my friends about that. I'm like, I don't know, just happens.
I know. Confirmation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And okay, well, thank you, Deborah, for sharing. I appreciate that. Shauna, do you want to share about any of these questions before we move on?
I jotted down some descriptors for, who do you have to be as a woman, what is expected. I just wrote down nurturing, organized, compassionate, patient, unforgetful. So just things that I think that as the role of like mom and wife, things that are like, oh yeah, that's my job because I'm the mom and the wife, and so it's like I'm the one that has to like not forget things or keep my cool and all of that stuff. So those were just some words that kind of came to me as I was thinking.
Yeah, well, great. And you know what? With a balanced masculine, the organization and stuff, that actually is a balanced masculine role. So like, it doesn't mean it's a gender role.
I definitely see a lot of the masculine energy in myself, as as we've been like defining these a little bit more. So that makes sense to me.
Sure. So yeah, it's very fascinating. And that's why I just put the healthy, like the balanced feminine, masculine in, so just for time as well sake, because we can dive deeper into it. But a lot of things that we carry as women and mothers, or just the mothering energy. So we're going to go into the mothering archetype. It's not because you have to be a mother. It's this energy that we carry. And so a lot of it is masculine energy that can be imbalanced that we're carrying and holding on to. And so it's very interesting. So let's go into that, you guys. So let's start with an embodiment practice about the shadow and light of the mother archetype or mothering energy. Okay. So if you have time to do this live, great. You're welcome to keep your video on or off. It doesn't matter to me, or you can do this later. Okay. And so you're welcome to stand up because I'd like you to move and feel this. So I'm going to walk you through it. If you don't have time to do it, that's okay. And anybody who's doing the replay, just pause and or listen and take some time. You can always turn on some music too. I didn't schedule music. So take a moment to, whether you're standing or you have a yoga mat nearby and you're on your hands and knees and want to start there, or you're just seated, wherever you want to start. Take some time to either close your eyes or soften your eyes, whatever feels comfortable for you. And feel what the mother archetype, and I know I haven't delved into it yet, but what that comes up for you in the lightness feels like. Mothering energy and light. You can tune into your heart. You can feel lightness of being around your body. And just notice when you start to tune into the mother archetype, mothering energy, what does that feel like as light? Doesn't necessarily have to be a color. I'm just the lightness of it, the brightness of it, the positive energies of it. And if you feel like you need to move with the energy, you can move with the energy and embody that feeling wherever it takes you. Then begin to shift. And of course, you can always listen to this and put it on pause and feel this even more. As you begin to shift, start to shift into the darkness of mothering energy, what that feels like in your body, the shadow side of mothering energy. And I'm not going to give any descriptors or examples because I just want you to feel and feel where that is in your body versus the lightness. And breathe. And how does that feel? Where is it in your body? When you go into the dark side and the shadow, it's taking a moment to feel the shadow side of the mother archetype. And taking the time as you need, but then moving back into the light of the mothering archetype. Where is that in contrast in your body versus the shadow? Is it easy to switch back and forth between? Is there a place where you feel more comfortable staying? And making sure you end with the light of the mother archetype, wherever that is for you, and that felt sense within your body, and moving with that. And when you're ready, taking as much time as you need, come back into this space. You can open your eyes when you're ready. Take a deep breath through your nose and exhale through your mouth and let it go with some sound. Anybody want to share what that felt like? Shauna?
Yeah, I can share.
Sure.
That's interesting. So the light side, some things that were coming to me were feeling a sense of nurturing, of wanting to care for others and take care of others and help others, and seeing the potential in others and the possibilities of all the wonderful things that somebody can create if given the right opportunities and encouragement. Um, and where I felt the light side was in the torso. So really the heart and the stomach, where you feel yourself expanding when you're breathing. And then for the shadow side, I felt it more in the extremities, like in the shoulders and the arms, where it would start to feel like heavy, like having to carry something.
Mm-hmm.
And that was sort of making me think of having expectations of others, and being disappointed by others, and wanting to discipline others. So I don't know if these are right, but that's just what was coming
Everything you feel
to
is
me.
right. Yeah. No, I think that's great.
Those were just sort of like the burdens of having to be the mother. And again, these aren't necessarily children. I could definitely see myself feeling these ways about my children, but also about like people that I've worked with. And it's like, you have expectations of people, and if they don't hold up to them, then it's frustrating or disappointing. So
Yeah.
those were some of the things that came up for me.
Well, great. Thanks for sharing, Shauna.
Yeah.
I love that. I love what you felt, and especially, that feeling like that on your shoulders, the weight.
Yeah. I didn't know where I felt it. I hadn't thought
Yeah.
about it before until you mentioned it, and I was like, oh yeah, that's in a spot.
Uh-huh. Our body carries so much, so much.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing, Shauna. Deborah, did you want to share it all?
No, the energy was like filtered light through jungle.
Mm,
And then my mother archetype um, visualizations is always like this beautiful big green Hawaiian Momoa
mm,
giant goddess. So it's
mm,
always in that environment.
I love it. And that's the light side of the mother archetype for you. What
Yeah.
about, where did you feel it in your body?
I just sort of feel it all over, like a
Okay.
warmth.
Okay. And what about when you switched to the shadow? Did anything come up there?
Oh, it's just like a big black hairy monster. That's my mom with her
Okay.
hands raised on either side. So it's just like, yeah, we don't go there anymore.
Sure, sure,
Yeah.
sure, sure. And yeah, and I want you know, like our mothering process does influence this in some way, but this is still the energy of it. That's why I brought this into this 3-day series because I see it show up so much in all of my clients and myself too. And so I was just like, I really want to talk about this. So we don't have to worry about embodying or talking about this anymore. We don't have to go there, Deborah. But let's go into, but I just see that over and over again. I have clients who, and I've seen this in myself too, in different ways, because like my mother was just young, my father too, and like they didn't know what to do. Like I was 39 when I had my daughter. Like it went through, and I'm still learning, but I at least had some things. And that's actually in being a mother, but it's like, you know, once I realized like my mother just had no idea. So I had to mother my mother in some ways. So I've always been hyper independent, and there were other things that happened too. And it's like, that's that story. But I know that I've had clients who were raised by nannies completely. I mean, I have a nannies in the morning, you know, like that helped me, but like completely because their mother just kind of checked out, you know, but their older siblings were raised by their mother, but the last two weren't, and they were all 2 years apart, and how that affects her. She's come on retreat with me, and I started connecting the dots to the mother wound with her. And then I've had other clients who she realized she was attracting in her faculty, like all these people with, I just thought it was sort of like just not the right matches. And she said, no, I think like some of them have borderline personality disorder. And I was like, oh, wow, because this goes into attracting your team and growing a business. It's a reflection of us. And she had to kind of go through, she wasn't paying herself enough. And I said, well, you know, you don't need to have all this faculty. First, you have to pay yourself, and changing that. And then it came out that her mother had borderline. So it was reflecting in her business. So I like to talk about all of this because it really does play a part. Father wound stuff too, but we have to start there. So I'm talking about the mother archetype, not in that we need to go deal with the mother wound, but how it plays out into our business. Oops. So we're going to talk about the shadow first, okay? And let me know in the chat, or feel free to share and come off on mute or unmute yourself, like if any of this resonates with you. So this is lack of client boundaries, constant worry and perfectionism, being in constant fear about your business, being a helicopter CEO, and that's micromanaging the day-to-day operations, judging your numbers, sacrificing your lunch break, time with family, or basic health needs for the business, or this can be your career too. Prioritize your business over lifestyle, and no success is ever good enough. Anybody relate to any of these? I see a chat. Shauna, I'm feeling called out. Yeah, this is why we're talking about it, because I'm like, oh my gosh, like I even have this, like,
So true.
yeah. So Shauna, what?
All of it.
All of it.
All
And
of it.
that is generally,
And not even my
the
business,
response.
even my job, you know, it's
Yeah,
all,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
all
It's
of it.
career and business. Yep. And
Yeah.
it's totally, and this is why I wanted to share this today, because when looking at the archetypes, it's like this one really stands out for women that I've seen, for myself too. Like I've moved away from being a I am still a little bit, but like I've learned to hire like different skill sets and better people. I went through a slew of narcissists in my yoga studio and wellness center in 2018. Like, and I remember, because I'm very nurturing and supportive, even though I have been a bull in a china shop in other aspects of my career. And I wanted to support my practitioners and everything. And I remember I was just like attracting, not everybody, of course, but I had to go through that. And that's why it's easy for me to consult other people now, because I've been there. Like I can see that happening. And that's part of the entrepreneur experience when you're expanding a team. But what I noticed is that it can be reflective of what we need to work on. So if we recognize that first, and I also have these hiring processes where I just know what to exclude. Like I just know those signs now. So I'm happy to share that wisdom with you guys. And I share that with my clients. But like part of it is like learning to delegate, learning to trust. And we'll talk about the when it comes to if you're growing a team or working with other people. And part of it is, of course, attracting the right team in the first place with the right skill sets that support you. So we'll go into the light side. But this, perfectionism, I can like it's shown up for me too. It shows up, it was very reflective to me. I was doing a horse thing and we were finishing a family constellation exercise and I had to walk the horse through whatever obstacle together. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And then I did it, but I was like, I didn't do that exactly right. So I'm going to do it again. And they're like, yeah, you're fine. You did it. And I was like, but I didn't do it exactly right. And they're like, no, you did it. And it was like, oh my gosh, I am such a perfectionist. And while I've let that go in some arenas in my life, it still plays out. Like that's what those things are for, to kind of show us and highlight things that we're doing. Deborah, how about you? Anything come to mind that you want to share? And if not, it's okay. But yeah, so we're going to have a little exercise after this, but let's talk about the light. So when you're in your balanced mother archetype, intuition informs your marketing, which we're going to go into next week in day 3, November 15th, same time. Compassion for self regarding goals, birthing new programs and message. And so that differs from the maiden archetype where you might have tons of ideas, but you actually never birth them. So that the mothering is actually birthing creative energy. And so wisdom and intuition, providing healing and support for your clients, being a leader who empowers a trusted team that supports you. That's really key. If your team is draining you, you have to change your team. And nourish and nurture self first. So the set boundaries so you're not always on, and trust. Like trust in something greater, trust in what you've built and followed through, which is the masculine container we're going to talk about next week. But like, so any of this coming up, any of this where you're like, actually, I do that as well, or no, I need to work on that. Feel free to pop in the chat or come off. Mm-hmm. Shauna?
I feel like, I do follow my intuition when it comes to marketing, but I'm not very consistent, so it doesn't really go anywhere. I have a problem birthing a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Between the two, I definitely see where I skew more on the shadow side. That's where I'm living. So it's nice to know what the light looks like.
Yeah.
I'm not there.
Yeah, well, it's little by little. And so one of the things I do with kind of the bottom few are that I put my self-care first, and I'm really good about it during the day because I have childcare, but actually having like, because now that my daughter's 4, it's at a time where she's more independent, and emotionally we need to separate and not be fused. And so I need to like make sure I'm going out at night. That's actually my intention right now. Not every night, like twice a week, because I have that support to do that. But sometimes it's so easy to be like, I'm tired and I'm not going to do that. and then, like I said, my self-care's on my schedule. And I actually, like, if you open up my Calendly and try to book with me, it's all around my self-care or when I want to take calls. Like on Mondays, I don't like to take calls. I have my private tango lesson. I might take one at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, after like my morning and my tango lesson. And then like, it's a quick one, but I won't do like long meetings. I'll do like a discovery call or something then. But I really have shifted that. I used to try for Friday and it never seemed to work. So Monday said, so sometimes it's a little juggle. Anything else to share on the light side? So your next reflection and your home practice are, what are 2 ways you can intentionally nurture and nourish yourself? So those are things to think about and write down when you have time. And so like 2 ways I want to, even though like, so my goal is always to work less than 3 hours, like maybe 4 days a week, and continue to build a team that executes everything, which I have on some level. And I'm still working on that. But part of it is my own issue of, it's easier for me to work than play with my child, because it just is. And some of that probably goes to childhood issues and that sort of stuff. But like, I need to like just stop by 4, whatever I'm doing, and then be with her. And it is one of the most challenging things to do. In the right moments, I'm very playful, but it's not like, I don't want to say it's not natural. It's that, because that's not it. It's like not the first thing I go to. And I would rather bake or do something with her instead of like play Barbies and Play-Doh anyway. So, and that's just how I am. So that was one of the ways I want to nurture and nourish myself, because I already do a lot of other things. And like I just mentioned, for me to make sure I'm going out dancing once or twice a week, so that I'm actually having some time away from business and momming life. Even though I do stuff like yoga, Pilates, I might go to the hot springs tomorrow. Like, it's still like doing stuff to care for yourself versus like going to have a cocktail and dancing is totally different vibe. So let's see, where we going here? Oh, so really what we're talking about is like reassessing our feminine ability to receive, so that we can accept support we crave and deserve. And one of the things is we can crave support, but we block it. And a friend of mine, I just talked to her yesterday, like she was talking about when she had one of her kids. And not that this is all about being a mother, like there's just the mother energy. Hi, Deborah. I don't know if I'm going yet or not, but if I do, I'll let you know, for the hot springs. But if not, we can go another day. And it's like, she like her partner and other people wanted to do the dishes and make her food and everything like that. And they weren't doing them right. So like, she was like, just get out, or whatever. I can't remember what she said, but it was like, we have to let go of that. And my grandma would always say, and I didn't understand it when I was younger, but now I totally understand it, care less. And I was like, oh, care less. Like, I care so much about everything and everyone. Like, how could you care less? I remember like crying to her. And she goes, it's not that you don't care at all. You just care less. So it doesn't like bother you anymore. And so as I'm older, I understand that. And I think about that all the time. And that was a shift too. And my grandma was not bake your cookies grandma. She was like, smoke cigarettes and drink Hamm's beer kind of grandma and talk politics. And so like, you'd think she just didn't care. And actually it was just like, no, I just care less because, I've got my outlets. So we'll wrap up with a little bit of leading from the feminine in business. We talked about this last week. So dream before doing. That's that whole being before doing as well. The flow and go rather than strive and drive. and working in cycles, and let go of linear pathways, because we're not always on. I know American society, Western society is like, you're always on and you have to be always available. And that's where those boundaries can come in, that you're not. And so when it comes to when you're starting to lead a team, whether you're managing, you're hiring for your own business, whatever, or you're collaborating with other people in your business, collaboration is a feminine leadership principle, and prioritizing the well-being of the team, including yourself. And we've all probably been in different settings where we've had a boss at some point, and we can tell like they led from the masculine versus feminine. And my main boss in my 20s, it was a woman, and she didn't have children, and she just sacrificed herself constantly and would snap at people and everything. And I was her right hand. And when I left to go take my COO position, she basically threw me out of the office. And I vowed I would never treat someone like that, because like people have dreams and they want to shift, and that's just part of life. And I had worked for her for 8 years. And it was like a personal affront, and we never had a good relationship after that. And I remember also being on a plane with her, and we were thinking of hiring, and she was like, but do you think they're going to have kids? And I was like, for one, you're not supposed to have those conversations. But for two, that was how like she knew that would affect the output, or that's what she thought, because that's how she was. And she took care of her husband and everything. Like her husband was like the fun guy at the office. And so it was just interesting. And she like took care of things. And I learned I didn't want to be like that. But I also learned great things from her too. And then after I left, all of her other trusted people, they had babies. So she had to adjust and learn how to adjust. And like, cause she had a whole staff of young women working for her, and her other two right hands, they also both had babies. And so like, she had to adjust and everything. And so that was good, but she did not lead with the feminine. And I think it taught the people under her, including myself, like how to shift and do that. So empathy, emotional intelligence. I mean, we all go through stuff. And delegation and empowering your team. So the big thing with delegation is like, you actually have to be clear, and you have to train them and direct and then empower them. Like I had a male boss who he would delegate, but he would never give you any clarity or direction. So you didn't know what you were doing. And so you weren't empowered. And that was a whole weird thing. I was the first person on the new regime where there was a bunch of old regime people. So that was interesting. But like, I've heard over and over how people are like, oh, I had a bad experience hiring a VA. Well, it could be not the right fit, but it also could be, were you clear? Did you train them? Did you delegate? There's a few different factors there. So inclusivity, flexibility, and vulnerability. So Brene Brown talks about dare to lead, leading with vulnerability. I think about like, so I have I live in Mexico, and I like to call them my team, but I have someone who cooks for me. Her mother's my housekeeper. Her other sister's my nanny. And like, I would say that I lead from the feminine with them. I'm vulnerable. I delegate, I collaborate, I prioritize their well-being. Yes, I pay them, but we have coffee in the morning together and chat, and we know about each other's lives, but there's also the professionalism. I'm still the boss or the señora, and they're still my staff, but I treat them we treat each other with mutual respect. And then I have a global team for my agency as well. And I communicate, I'm clear, and they know there's space to ask questions. And it's all online too. So that's a whole different thing when you're not in person. So just know that there is a way to I talk about this with another client. I'm going to wrap up. So for your time, I respect your time. There, as she grew her psychotherapy practice, like she just went through some turnover and she thought she was failing. And it's like, no, you just maybe attracted the wrong people that weren't ready to support you as the boss and as the practice, and really be a part of it. And that happens. And she wasn't failing at all. But and then we went through this thing where she hired some people, and then she hired someone in a rush, and this one's like more like the woo-woo spiritual kind of person, and I'm like, well, why'd you hire her if she that kind of annoys you? And she's like, oh, I just thought I needed that on my team. And I'm like, you don't, if that's not what you want your team to be. And so she's, still continuing to learn that who she wants on her team and to represent within, they're in Greenwich, Connecticut, and a different, where do you want, how do you want to operate there? Not that having someone who's woo-woo spiritual is bad, but if it's not aligned with who you want. So I said, go back and say write down like a home practice, who's your ideal team member? And then start attracting them. So, this is always a learning process, but I want you to know that thriving, not just surviving, is our birthright as women. And we're able to do that. And so here's some next steps. Whoops. And of course you'll get access to the replay. I'll put it in the same portal. Is create those 2 intentions for your home practice, is how to nurture yourself, and also contemplate, and this can be a journaling exercise as well, who or what is holding your bigger masculine container? Who is holding you? This is something I was asked in a feminine energy mentorship that I was in, or that I'm still finishing. And I was like, and this can be like a greater, higher power sort of stuff, if that works for you. It can be financial support. It can be something else, but like, who is holding you when you as a woman are carrying so much? And then journaling, go back to those questions and complete those journal entries about the femininity wounds. Okay. And next week, we're going to build the sacred container. So we're going to do some soul marketing where we can look at the rest of the year, or you can start to envision, you can use the same practice for next year. And really think about, how do you want to market your business? What feels most aligned with you? So I'll take you through that process. And again, it'll be Wednesday, but November 15th, and 9 a.m. Pacific time, which is 11 a.m. Central time. And I'll see you then. If you have any questions or anything in the meantime, please don't hesitate to ask me. And I look forward to seeing you then.
See you next week.
Bye.
Thank you.
Next week. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, you guys. See you next week.
Bye-bye.